All right, guys, welcome back here. It's Tuesday. Hopefully you enjoyed Spanish Absolutism yesterday. I'm trying to go a little bit longer today so you guys don't drive poor Miss Dockery crazy with your cell phones and or apathy, especially you first period. Quick question, how many of us are missing and who's coming in late right now? Bam. All right, I'm going to say there's at least 7 of you missing. I could be wrong, but I'm probably right. So, anyway, absolutism in France. The Spanish have gotten out to a huge lead. And they were doing outstanding until they overspent their money and their armada was sunk. And so next up in absolutism is going to be the guy who's probably did it the best, and that is King Louis XIV of France. Now, as a young boy, he sees his dad controlled by these two men, Cardinal Richelieu, the head of the church, and his chief minister, Melega. And as they were born poor, they had an instant dislike for the nobles. And so they tried heavy-handed techniques in getting rid of them. This caused a lot of bloodshed and a lot of intrigue surrounding the throne of Louis XIV. And since he becomes king when he's really, really young, he is smart enough to realize that this isn't going to work. He's going to have to work with his nobles or through his nobles. He's going to get rid of them and make himself the most important institution in France. But instead of destroying them with heavy-handedness, he's going to be a little more subtle about it. And if you gave Louis XIV a Mensa test, he probably blows it out of the water. An absolute brilliant guy. First thing he does, instead of destroying the nobles, he works with them. He lets them, as I said yesterday, he goes out to the remote provinces, he does the parade wave, and lets the local people see him going to talk to their local noble leader. Behind closed doors, he says, Connor, this is what you're going to do and how you are going to do it, and you are going to like it. The public outside thinks their noble is so cool, he has come out to see their noble. What they don't realize is Louis is slowly subjugating his ascent to power. So when he's 23 years old, Louis, when Chief Melega dies, says that he is not going to name a new minister. He is going to be his own advisor. He's going to control things himself. And as I was talking about yesterday, what he does is create a small bureaucracy. He is hands-on. He wants to know everything that is going on at the national level in France. Again, he doesn't have time to worry about if the stoplight at Homestead and High School Road is out. That's a local problem. But he needs to know what's going on within his country. And as I was telling you about President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, meeting 52-some people a day, Louis is going to meet with a couple. And he forms 3 basic ministries or councils. All great absolute monarchs do this. His 3 ministers, he had like the Secretary for Foreign Affairs, all right? How are we sitting internationally? Who's our friend? Who's our ally? Who's our enemy? How strong is our military, Army and Navy? And lastly, our domestic policy. With these 3 small heads of state or ministers, Louis is able to spend hours with them each and every day. Trusting them, figuring out, forming a game plan, and issuing their orders. The ministers and their staffs were specifically chosen. Once Louis gave the order, the minister and his staff make sure that it gets done. And these ministers were chosen either from trusted families that had been in royal service for a long time, so they are tied to the throne, or trusted families who are just starting their ascent to power. Their job and their social position is connected to Louis. I'm going to elevate your status because of me. If I'm not here, then neither are you. So families who have a long line of loyalty or families on the rise starting their ascent. And while that second group of people are in good standing with Louis, they have nothing to fall back on. They have no ancestral land, no ancestral power base. So they depend upon the king for everything, which is exactly what Louis wants. Now, Louis is smart. He makes sure that the nobles and other wealthy groups benefit from Louis's increase in authority and power. He will control things again on the national level. He will limit the nobles' influence on his monarchy. They can't interfere. They can't tell him what to do. But by allowing Connor to be powerful at the local level, this is a whole other thing in its entirety. All right? They've got to control things he doesn't have time for. You stay busy in your local area. Don't worry about what we're doing among the nation as a whole. And to do this, another hallmark of absolute monarchs is building something big. So Louis is going to build 12 miles outside of Paris, the great palace of Versailles. Now, Versailles is among the great, royal palaces in the world, and more than a palace, it is a small village, about 12 miles outside Paris. Louis's small city apartment was a little thing today known as the Louvre, the gigantic art museum. The Louvre is so big that if you spent 1 minute reading the signs and looking at every art exhibit, it would take you 3 weeks to get through it. But Louis felt stuffy inside the city, so he had to get out and spread his wings, and he builds the palace at Versailles. And I told you Louis is smart. It's also a centerpiece of propaganda. He builds it to showcase his power. The structure and the grounds that are built to augment his power and his glory. All right? When it was opened, he descends amongst the people through fireworks. When his first son was born, he was lowered, dressed like a conquering Caesar. Everything was done to augment his image. Now, the problem is, it took half of France's annual tax revenue, 50% of the tax revenue, to construct, to pay, and maintain Versailles. It's a really big house, and it's really cool, but it costs a lot of money. It's going to pay big political dividends early on, but 50%, ooh man, this is tough. And Louis constructs life around Versailles among his schedule. To get anything from the government, a person had to go through what is known as the patronage system. All right? And what is a patron? Like a patron of the arts, like Harun al-Rashid and Lorenzo Medici. Yes, we'll pay for the art and the music and the sculptures, but you got to build it the way I want it. And so Louis is going to force his nobles to build smaller chateaus or castles around Versailles. You have Chambord and you have Clemenceau, or whatever it's called, way out in the Loire River Valley. Well, you've got to have your house. Now you've got to build another one close to Louis. And Louis does this intentionally, right? You've got to build a house. And then on Monday, Connor has got to hold a party. On Tuesday, Sydney has to build a party. On Wednesday, Nia has to have this party. Third period, we'll go Connor, we'll work our way down. You guys have got to have this fabulous party. Each one of you has to one-up the one before it. So one has the Super Bowl party. One has the Valentine's Day party. One has the St. Patrick's Day party. They've got to be bigger and better. A nacho fountain, a slip and slide, a bounce house, unlimited pizza, video game truck. And you got to spend money to hang out with rich people. It costs money. And Louis is always there. And what he is doing is he is forcing his nobles to spend money. They go broke. Now, their standing in France is dependent upon Louis. If they need a job, if they need money, if they need a loan, they gotta go to Louis. Subtly, he bankrupted them. And it's proximity to authority in reverse. If you're a jerk, if you might rebel, you now have to live right next to me. Now I can keep an eye on your every little move. It's brilliant subtlety, kind of master mindful manipulation to get this stuff done. So now that you're broke, you've spent all your money, you got to go through the patronage system. If the king favored a person, he would allow you to keep your job or your castle, your chateau, or complete an assigned task. If you made Louis mad, if you were angry, you were gone, and you've got no financial resources to fall back upon. And Louis organized his court at Versailles around his daily rules. If Louis wanted to eat, eggs and bacon at 9 p.m. for breakfast, breakfast was at 9 p.m. If Louis wanted to get up and have, a game of bowling or a party at 2 a.m., then everybody partied at 2 a.m. It's what you did. Now, the rules of patronage don't make much sense as a way to run the government. There is a long, bizarre list of rules. You had to do things the way Louis wanted them to be. In order to be around the king, you've got to play by his rules. And Louis made a lot of this stuff up, literally just to mess with the nobles, with the people. So, in order to hang out with Louis, you got to spend money. You're going to be financially weakened, and you got to play by his rules. Some of the things that he did was he would grease a pig and put a jewel on it and make his nobles chase it. Whoever caught the greased pig could keep the jewel. He made people wake him up in the morning. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. He made them get him dressed. He made people sing him to go to sleep tonight. Since an audience with the king to ask a favor, to ask patronage, was highly sought after, you do pretty much whatever he wanted. One of the more bizarre things he would do is they didn't have toilets, right? They had a big ceramic bowl called a chamber pot. Well, Louis would make people sit on the chamber pot and warm it up. So when he went to the bathroom in the winter, he wouldn't get cold butts, all right? That's gross. It's weird. Who thinks of that stuff? Well, Louis did it just to mess with his people, to get them to do the things he wanted. And slowly but surely, he was breaking their power, making them depend upon him. Weird guy. So here's Louis. Here's the Palace of Versailles. Now it is the entryway. Thing was huge. They eventually build a connection here and they fill this area back in and they turn it into a pond. They turned it into a pond because some of Louis' sailors captured a Spanish galleon, one of the Habsburg ships. And they drag it into Versailles, and they throw it in the back because Louis wanted to play pirate. Arg me mate, yeah, I be a pirate. And so they floated boats around and played pirate. When you played chess or checkers or a game against Louis, you had to lose. Oh gee, your highness, you beat me again. And there's a story, they were playing cards one night, and a princess from Austria got a little drunk, and she sat down at Louis' table and was giggling, irritating him when she wasn't invited. She was sent away. A steward went and got her luggage, threw it in the street, and she was kicked out. Louis didn't like knocking, so everybody had to have fingernails and kind of scratch on the doors. Very strange and weird. It's just some of the things that Louis did. And here is the famous Hall of Mirrors, this beautiful fresco. And on this side, you've got the floor-to-ceiling windows. And over here, you've got matching reflective mirrors, while Louis sits in the throne right in the middle. And one of the things that he would do is he would entertain audiences in the morning when the sun is rising. The sun would shine through the windows, reflect off the mirror into the eyes meeting with Louis, making them squint or bow their heads. So subconsciously they were bowing their head, paying homage to Louis. And once again, he thought of all this stuff. He detailed it out. It's crazy, but he does it. Here are some of the gardens. They're just beautiful and wonderful, sculpted and maintained. The palace, if you can envision it, would fit on High School Road out here. All right, it's about a half a mile long. Here's the lake where he played pirate. And recently, it underwent a renovation, and the gate and everything will be decorated, gilded, coated in a little bit of gold. It was the symbol of Louis. He was known as the Sun King, and he had his face radiating from the rays of the sun. So here we have the Palace of Versailles coming in at 2,300 rooms. Now here in North Carolina, the largest private residence in the United States is the Biltmore Estate out in our mountains in Nashville. If you've ever been there, you know how big it is. 175,000 square feet, 250 rooms. Well, it is just a shack compared to Versailles at 720,000 square feet and 2,300 rooms. Versailles wasn't just a palace, it was an actual city. There were like 400 or 700 boys, I can't remember which. Their job was to sit in a room, take the firewood and throw it on a fireplace, either the cooking fires or the heating fires. Not to chop the wood, not to split the wood, not to carry the wood, just to throw it on the fireplace. And here is Louis, here is his visage and the sun radiating out from him, the fleur-de-lis, the symbol of France, and the new gate outside of Versailles. So that's just a little bit of the background on Versailles and how Louis got things done. Now it was Louis's tutor, a guy by the name of Bishop Jacques Benet Bousseau here, that gave Louis his idea of royal authority. Bousseau, being a bishop, knows the more powerful his king is, the more powerful he is. So he says, Louis, only God can judge a pope. So therefore, only God can judge a king. God allowed the Pope to be elected Pope. All right, the Pope works for God. There's no one between the God and the Pope. So it is with you, Louis. Only God can judge a king. He said it was God's divine right that he was king. King by divine right. And since that is so, the king should not be subject to the whims of the nobles. Louis wouldn't be king if God didn't want him to be. So Bousseau comes up with a phrase that makes Louis famous, L'État c'est moi. It means, I am the state. I am to France what the sun is to the earth. France exists because of me. Louis XIV embodied this. Now many years ago when I was a real teacher, my students made me that sign, I am CHS. They made it right up here, L'État c'est moi, or L'école il est moi. I am the school. I am Chapel Hill High School. All right? Chapel Hill High School revolves around what we do up in here, which is why you guys are so lucky. And so Louis, subtly bankrupting and subjecting his nobles to his authority and bending them to his will achieve a level of absolutism that no one else could have thought of. He was a master of propaganda, master of manipulation. And while he does this, he does not oppress the daily lives of his people. To his people, Louis was a rock star. They absolutely loved him. So, Louis will basically use his power among three areas. Number one, he decided whom France would make peace with and who France would go to war against. Now, they were a rival of Catholic Spain, competing for Jesuit missionaries, but the big rival is going to be England. The English and the French, they just don't play well together. One has nice baguettes and scones, the other one has like crumpets and like tea. All right. Who is France going to go to war with, and who is France going to seek peace with? Secondly, Louis is going to regulate religion. All right? All right, we are going to regulate religion. France was a predominantly Catholic country, so it's good if all of us would be good French Catholics. And number three, to oversee the economy, to make sure France is rocking and rolling and benefiting from all of these things. So by the mid to late 1660s, France at this time is far and away stronger than any other European nation in terms of their economy and their military might. The French are unified. They're unified behind their symbol, their king. In England, they hate their king. They hate the Stuarts. But in France, they love King Louis. He's the man. And so all the jokes about the Franco-Prussian War, World War I, World War II, don't play that game with Louis. Louis would chop you up. France was bigger, stronger, more powerful than any European nation in terms of national unity, military power, throw in naval power, and governmental efficiency. Everything ran like a Swiss watch. Louis XIV had the physical and the financial. Again, it's all about a secure financial base. Has the ability to maintain a large and a powerful military. Many other monarchs begin to copy what Louis was doing, all right? And they say, you know, imitation is the best form of flattery. All of a sudden, everybody starts building versions of Versailles. They adopt French dress, French cooking, French etiquette. All of a sudden, everybody's trying to copy what Louis was doing because it was working. Other monarchs are sending their courtiers to figure out what's Louis doing and how can I do that too. The culture of France becomes the model for everyone else in Europe. Painting styles, music, architecture. French culture and refinement and manners replaces that of the Renaissance. The Renaissance is ushered out and the French style is ushered in. And Louis achieves enormous power. But, as we see happen time and time and time again, just as Louis reaches the height of his power, things start to go wrong. And Louis will spend the rest of his long reign as the King of France trying to combat two traditional French enemies. Number one, the Habsburgs of Spain. And number two, the stinking English. But Louis is one of those rare guys, those Jedi leaders. Not only does he have a grand vision and he sees what will happen in the future, this action will reciprocate in time. He's this larger-than-life, energetic, powerful ruler. And he will live an incredibly long time. He's one of those guys that just keep on living. Louis will reign as king for 72 years. That's almost double a peasant's life expectancy. And so, he will outlive most of his sons. And Louis XIV will live longer than any monarch in the long history of the French monarchy. But he himself will be responsible for a series of mistakes that lead to the end of the era of French dominance. Whoops. One of the first things that Louis does when he makes a mistake is in 1685, he will revoke the Edict of Nantes. And the Edict of Nantes was a policy created by his dad for freedom of worship. Really don't care who you worship as long as you're monotheistic. Catholicism, great. You want to be one of those few Protestants, great. If you're Judaic and Hebrew, great, fine, whatever. Muslims, not so much. But, you know, Christian, Jewish, that's fine. Well, Louis doesn't like this. He's competing with the old Spanish there, and they're meddling in his business. So Louis was determined to unify France along religious lines. Everybody's going to be Catholic. There was a small, right around about 10% Protestants in France. So Louis revokes the Edict of Nantes and he bans Protestants from governmental offices. No Protestant could work for the government. He also bans them from important professions like printing. So Protestants can't print anything anymore. Doctor, lawyer, things that everybody needed. And he closed Protestant schools. This is an enormous mistake. Because in France, there were about 250,000 Protestants. They're angry. They're closed out of their jobs. They're closed out of the government. They can't worship freely. Their kids can't go to school. So they pack up and they leave. Many of the Protestants, some go to England, most go to Germany. Also traveling to Germany will be a lot of the Hebrews. Many of these Protestant and Hebrew groups are either wealthy artisans and or merchants. So when they leave, they take their families, they take their job, their work, and most importantly, their money with them. All the tax money and tax revenue Louis enjoyed from these professional and trading positions is now gone. And while Louis has a large and a powerful army, he decides to do what every good monarch does. He wants to make his empire a little bit bigger. He wants to explore outside of his borders. I'm bigger, tougher, and stronger than everybody else. But what do wars do? They cost, say it with me, a lot of Aztecs. No, they cost a lot of money. So, Louis begins to fight wars on the European continent. First, he takes on Spain. They're a pretty solid opponent. But then he begins to fight overseas. He's fighting England and North America. And what did I tell you? Warfare is expensive. It's not only numbers of troops, but who can move his troops the farthest, the fastest. So we're fighting in Europe and we're fighting in North America. Most people are only fighting in one area. Louis is fighting in several. Then he gets into a fight with Sweden. Volvo, Swedish fish, I don't know. Then he gets into a fight with the major German states, part of the Holy Roman Empire. So France is taking on everyone, and they're doing well, all right? They're doing great. The German states are known as the League of Augsburg. And so Louis is fighting. But most in Europe were terrified that Louis was going to dominate. And it was worth a war to try and stop him. Germany decides to go to war, and while France makes initial gains on all fronts, taking on almost all of Europe around France's borders and fighting England and North America is just too much. It begins to strain even the powerful economy of Louis XIV. Remember, Versailles is just taking half this. Even with Louis's powerful, well-equipped army, his number of soldiers, and his money, France just can't succeed. And then things get even more difficult in 1700 with the War of Spanish Succession. When the King of Spain dies, all the other European powers want to partition Spanish territory, not only in Europe, but in the New World, as a way to preserve the balance of power. We cannot let any one European country get too strong. Look at what France is doing. It's taking all of us, and we can still maybe not stop them. Problem is, the Spanish kingdom was left to a young boy. And this young boy just happened to be the grandson of King Louis XIV. Everybody loves their grandpa. It's Grandpa. Come on and sit on my lap and let's just talk about when Grandpa was a young boy. Let's, talk about this and that. And everyone is afraid if Louis's grandson gets the throne, what are they going to do? He's going to give all of his money to Grandpa. The Spanish riches, especially those in the Americas, the gold and silver, is going to be funneled right to Louis, giving him more power and money than he already has. And my God, we're not going to be able to stop it. So the War of Spanish Succession happens. Because of this, there are renewed efforts. The entire Holy Roman Empire, the Dutch in the Netherlands, and England go to war against Louis XIV in France. And they coordinate and they work together. And for the very first time in his long and awesome and powerful reign, Louis goes to war without enough money in his coffers. And his technology from 15, 20, 30 years before, which was state of the art, is now old and worn out. And the English are figuring out what they need to do to begin to match him. All right? So they begin to practice with live ammunition and have different military infantry techniques. And even with his riches still coming in from North America, the British are going to use their navy and newer military technology they specifically developed to fight him, and Louis is going to lose. And it's tough because Louis doesn't lose. And when he's done, unfortunately, when Louis dies, very, very, very old age, he's like 80-some, close to 80, his dominant monarchy collapses. France was nearly economically ruined. He was one of those larger-than-life personalities. He got things done. People listened to him. He was extremely bright. But just like we've heard about with Han Wu-Ti and, going back to Pericles, he was so busy doing things, when he dies, nobody else knows what to do. Well, Louis took care of it. Well, Louis had a plan for that. Well, Louis does this. Well, Louis did that. Now, all of a sudden, there's no more Louis. And France is almost bankrupt. What had once been the strongest nation in Europe had been financially affected by years of warfare, coupled with heavy taxes. On top of that, there were several bad agricultural harvests. So Louis is losing ground and losing money. Louis's descendants didn't have his physical dominance or his brilliant mental genius. And while Louis was hands-on, he made sure he had a hand in everything, and everything revolved around him. His descendants were spoiled rich kids. They didn't grow up having to work. They didn't have to grow up fearing for their lives with political intrigue, with Mazarin and Richelieu being heavy-handed. They inherited wealth. The hard work was done. They were just rich kids. They didn't pay attention to the throne and what it took to make things work. And so when Louis dies, the most dominant monarchy in Europe will collapse. Louis had mastered and perfected absolutism. And while there will be other powerful French monarchs and other European monarchs, nobody attains the heights of the power created by the Sun King, Louis XIV. When this happens, once again, his descendants, once again, oops-a-daisy, we are nothing but happy, fat, and lazy, and the empire collapses. So that is the end of the great era of French absolutism. It is awesome, but it falls apart. Now we're going to start something, one of my favorites, this one here, absolutism in Melega. Va vas lubu, my little Americans. Privet. Ah, yes. Absolutism in Mother Russia is very different. We've looked at 4 monarchies here in Europe. We looked at the English. We looked at the Spanish yesterday. We looked at the French. Now we are going to start looking at absolutism in Mother Russia with great Romanov dynasty. All right. Absolutism in Mother Russia is a little different. Geographically, Russia is way the heck over there. It's so far away, nobody really considers it part of Europe. The bulk of the continent is in Asia. West of the Ural Mountains, people look more, European, Slavic, so they're considered Europeans. Most of the country, much of it uninhabited, east of the Ural Mountains, going all the way over to the Pacific Ocean, people look more Asiatic. But compared to the great capitals of Europe, your London, your Paris, your Berlin, your Amsterdam, your Brussels, your Rome, Russia is way over there somewhere, right? Only out of courtesy did other European royals accept it as European. And the leaders were considered different as well. Russia, politically, was just strange. While everyone else had moved away from feudalism, Russia was still doing, I have much good idea. We have feudalism. Well, dude, we gave that up like a while back. It's like a hot thing in Russia. Russia also geographically is big, but in the West, it had no access to a warm water port. I will say this again, they had no access to a warm water port. This will affect them. They can't ship and trade stuff during the long winter months or communicate. And so accepting this problem was one of the great family dynasties of the world, the great Romanov dynasty. Yes, like Agent Romanov, all right, in the Black Widow in the Marvel series. Like her Agent Romanov comes from these guys. And as the reign of Ivan the Terrible, you remember him kind of went crazy and starts killing people. As the reign of Ivan the Terrible ends, a period of Russian history comes up known as the Time of Troubles. And the Time of Troubles is a chaotic, super violent time even for Russia. And at the end of the Time of Troubles, the Russian nobles, known as boyars, are going to elect like B-O-Y-A-R-S. It's like, hey, boy, are you a noble? Give me a brief second here. I got to answer this phone call. Bill Melega. Yep, what's up? Where are you guys at? Okay, I am actually recording right now. How soon till you're here? Okay, copy that. All right, bye. Sorry about that, everybody. Business as usual. Sorry. At the end of the Time of Troubles, a group of Russians known as boyars elect a member as their leader. He's a guy about your age. He's 17 years old, Mikhail Romanov. He and his next 2 successors are going to end the Time of Troubles, and they are going to bring stability and centralized control to Mother Russia. All right. However, the country is still recovering from this long period of violence and civil war. And the boyars, the Russian nobles, are difficult to work with at times because they want their independence. Who's this punk kid going to tell me what to do? Also enjoying their independence is the Russian secret police force known as the Streltsy. All right? KGB, FSB, whatever you want to call them. They also cause great instability. And it is one of Michael's descendants that is going to take over. And his name is going to be Peter. In 1682, Peter and his older, but more sickly twin Ivan become rulers. Very similar to Louis XIV, they become kings very young. And Peter and Ivan cling to a very fragile throne surrounded with bloodshed and intrigue and nastiness because everyone feared the Russian secret police. And then, as they grow up in this era of bloodshed and violence, in 1689, Peter assumes full control when his brother Ivan is killed. Either he was killed or assassinated, or many people think that Peter murdered him himself or ordered the murder. Ivan was the firstborn twin, but he was kind of sickly and kind of weak, where Peter is the bigger, dominant twin. And Peter takes over, and when he does, he goes to his older sister Sophia, who is a harsh, ferocious woman herself, and he exiles her. I will build you a dacha, but get out. You will come to the capital when I call you. Young Peter has taken over. And Peter is convinced his sister was ruling in his stead. She may have gotten rid of him, but the violence and the bloodshed surrounding his ascension convinces Peter that the power of the Russian king, or the Tsar, which is spelled C-Z-A-R or T-S-A-R, must be kept safe. I thought that was somebody knocking. It's the bus riders. The jealousy of the Russian boyars and the instability of the Streltsy is going to lead Peter to believe there's no way he can depend upon the boyars or the Streltsy to keep him in power. He needs something loyal to him and to him alone. And that is a big, strong military. If I build a big, strong military and they are loyal only to me, they will keep me safe from the nobles and the Streltsy. And the only way to build this army is to make it modern. So I've got to go over and look at those Western countries. I've got to check out England. I've got to check out France. And I've got to learn this technology of Western Europe. I've got to go over there and I've got to see it for myself. Their resources, their technology, how they get things done. Peter was determined to learn it all, to figure it out, and copy it. Now, Peter, just like Louis, that tapping is driving me crazy, frickin' lax bros, that if you gave him a Mensa test, just like Louis, Peter would have blown it out of the water. Peter was crazy, but he was probably a crazy genius. So in 1687, he goes to visit Europe in disguise. There's a problem with Peter. He's a giant. He's like 6'9" or 6'10". So quickly, everybody figures out who he is. He was studying manufacturing in shipyards and military hardware, but his size gives him away, and the monarchs of Europe want to talk to him. I can't block out that banging. That's around 40-some minutes. Look over your notes. Talk about thesis statements. Be good for Miss Dockery, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right. Oh, that's 44 minutes. That's plenty.